Well, what has this conference series been about, really? Let me share with you just a few of the highlights so you will have a sense of the remarkable events which have led to this concluding World Forum. A year ago, young people from across this country and from more than 20 countries assembled at the University of Virginia for an International Youth Summit on the future of democracy. Undersecretary of State Karen Hughes delivered the keynote address, and these most impressive young people listened not only to scholars and leaders, but to each other. They came to Jamestown, the first Virginia capital, and to Washington, our nation's capital, and they began a candid dialogue about their own futures that continues to this day over the Internet. Future youth summits are already being planned. Next, we gathered at Longwood University and Hampton-Sydney College for a timely reflection on sustaining democracy in the global age. Hundreds of scholars from points far and wide assembled to hear, not just from other scholars, but from experienced public servants such as Ambassador Richard Holbrooke, Congressman Lee Hamilton, and John Agresto of the Iraq Study Group. They commented candidly on the major issues of the day, as well as global and historical trends. We met next at Norfolk State University to consider the experience of racial and ethnic minority groups in democratic systems, and especially to hear the voices from the African American community who for so long were within the veil, but who are now a part of the rich tapestry that is the pluralistic American political system and society. Stirring cultural performances, reflections about faith, and remarks by Governor Kane and noted author Juan Williams were among the highlights of that conference. Next came a conference hosted by George Mason's University's Mercatus Center in February. We focused on the importance of free markets to democracy, both historically and moving forward. Congressional chiefs of staff from around the country heard leading economists share their insights about the interrelationship between economic freedom and political liberties. And Professor Gordon Wood, from whom we will hear tomorrow, provided a truly fascinating description of the legal and political origins of corporations as vehicles for pursuing both public purposes and private ventures. The University of Richmond School of Law was the host of a most impressive conference on democracy and the rule of law. It brought to the Commonwealth and to that campus the Chief Justice of the United States, the Lord Chief Justice of England and Wales, and numerous other leading jurists from nations all over the world who gathered for several days of spirited discussions about constitutionalism, doctrines of religious and political liberty, the role of the judiciary, separation of powers, and other timely topics. The jurists presented a plaque which, if you visit historic Jamestown, you will see. That plaque commemorates the planting of the rule of law on American soil 4 centuries ago. We then assembled at Old Dominion University for a conference developed in partnership with the North Atlantic Treaty Organization. That conference featured remarks by British Ambassador David Manning, NATO Commander General Lance Smith, and other senior military and diplomatic leaders who addressed the necessity of international partnerships and collective security in preserving the opportunity for democratic success around the world. We then gathered at Virginia Commonwealth University for a discussion of democracy and diversity, led by Mayor Cory Booker of Newark and Richmond Mayor and former Governor L. Douglas Wilder. The importance of a broad-based and inclusive approach to self-government, one that bridges social, cultural, and other divides, was the focus of that important dialogue. And finally, in preparation for this conference, leading scholars of classical democracy and Enlightenment-era thoughts assembled 2 weeks ago at Virginia Tech to illuminate the philosophical foundations of democracy and the heritage of political thought that influences us even today. That discussion will flow directly into our first panel tomorrow morning, which will address the architecture of liberty put in place centuries ago by the American founders. I think you can tell from this very summary review that it has been a remarkable year of discussion and reflection, setting the stage for the exciting conversation here that we anticipate over the next 3 days. We also look forward to a longer-term impact of these proceedings as published documents, video segments, and access to the information developed in the course of the year on the Jamestown Democracy website, and other conferences are planned to continue the dialogue.
I stopped to think about the Constitutional Convention in the hot summer of 1789. It was a fiercely hot summer. The delegates had traveled long distances, leaving their families by stagecoach, horseback, and it had been an arduous challenge. How well we know that. Because they created one of the most magnificent documents ever created by man or woman, the Constitution of the United States. And historians will tell you, and I've been challenged on this statement, but it is correct, our Constitution and Declaration, our Republic of the United States of America, is the oldest continuously surviving republic on earth today. Someone challenged me, oh, Switzerland. And I said, yes. But I used the word continuous because Napoleon crossed the Alps, and for a very brief period of time, he took that government over. Dear friends, it is important to reflect and always acknowledge the extraordinary courage of those people who left Great Britain, not to seek solely religious freedom, but indeed in the entrepreneurial spirit, to find gold, to find other precious things, to let King Tobacco, as it was referred to in those days, be shipped back. And the hardships that they suffered and the courage they endured enabled us to be here today, celebrating that one most important word of all, freedom. Freedom is being challenged today as it has been in the past. And we're fortunate in this great nation we've always had those who will stand up, indeed give their lives, if that be necessary, in the cause of freedom. So today we're gathered, and this evening, to inaugurate an extraordinary conference that all of us will remember. But I want to point out one other thing that Constitutional Convention in the summer of 1789 achieved. A landmark achievement that no other legislature in the history of the United States, to the best of my knowledge, in the history of the United States has achieved. They concluded their work in secrecy without leaks. Now, the body to which I'm so indebted, the United States Senate, and have served these nearly 30 years, cannot match that record. Nor the House, Mr. Scott, nor the Virginia legislature, and I'm sure there are those in this assembly from that. But as Ben Franklin emerged on that hot September day, the press rushed up to him, and they said, "Mr. Franklin, what have you and your colleagues wrought?" It's an old-fashioned term for what have you created, what have you brought about. And he said very sternly and briefly, "A republic, if you can keep it."